generally, if my mom gives me some sort of stock advice, I know it's time to sell and get out.
Yeah.
And
Hello, and welcome to the Retireable Podcast. I'm Mike Wallace.
my name's John Sauger.
How's it going today, John?
It's good. It's good. We're that different time of year where we're getting a little late start. I had some snow in the driveway and had to clear off. So it's one of those things. If you're listening to this during warm weather, just remember snow was there too.
Yeah. Well, in Northern Michigan, as they say, any day is different, right?
That's true. That's true.
So, but yeah, it's kind of the way things are now. So, well, I just want to, we have some exciting news as a company, so I want to kind of discuss that a little bit. A couple of weeks back, we were named a top workplace by the Detroit Free Press for the state of Michigan in the small business category. It was kind of an exciting event for us, wasn't it?
It's always that, and it's one of those awards that you can't buy.
Yeah.
It's unbiased. Employees give their feedback anonymously, so it's always a nice award to see when you get that. So.
Yeah, no, so it's kind of neat because it is voted by the employees, so that's cool. And we've actually been a top workplace for 15 years running. We've had different levels as far as places in the top workplaces. We've been third. Or 3 times we were actually first place in the whole state of Michigan for the small business category. This year we placed third in the state, which again we're very proud of that. So
absolutely.
That's kind of
anytime
cool.
You're in the top 3, right? I mean, it's a great award.
Yeah, we're happy with top 10, right? But top 3 is even better.
Absolutely.
And the event was kind of cool because they do a big shindig down at the Motor City Casino, and we got to bring a bunch of people from the company. I don't know, probably 4 or 5 tables of individuals to support our company, and they have some local speakers and different awards for the different categories because there's different businesses that are out there too. But it's nice to see everybody down there and get dressed up and also to spend some time with the other employees here at the company.
Get to see other offices or different spots you don't get to see as much. So,
yeah,
very nice.
Nice social opportunity.
Absolutely.
As far as that's concerned too.
Absolutely.
Yep. And a nice honor for that as well.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely agree. It's one of those things where anytime you get an award, you want to be appreciative of it, and that's one of the ones that's just a great one, right? Because we are a growing company. We do have some changeover from time to time. We do have people kind of coming and going in different offices and stuff, and we're not always together. And to see where you get that type of an award from those different votes and different feedback tells us that the company's doing the right thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you're right. This year, for the first time, we included our outside offices. I didn't really think about that too. Yeah. Because we opened two new offices this year, one in Farmington Hills, Michigan, one in Okemos, Michigan. And then we're in the process of opening 2 more, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think we announce those until they're open, but yeah, we have a couple different ones that are on the way.
They're on there.
And a few more next year, actually, that we're scouting locations for. So.
Yeah, exactly. But 2, we already have the locations, and we are just getting things built out and everything else in those too. So yeah, we'll announce those. So stay tuned, right?
Absolutely. There we go. There we go.
All right. So. John, I think we want to talk about now, and it's, again, as John said, there's snow on the ground. It's kind of later in the year, and in 2025 this year, right? With this year, we're still 2025. Okay, I got that. Yeah, and so just want to kind of give an idea where we are with the economy this year and what's been happening. And so I know you had a really good analogy that you had shared with me about kind of how the U.S. economy almost drives the world economy, and there's different reasons why, or obviously versus a lot of the smaller countries out there.
Sure. And the kind of you're talking about the analogy with the boats, and
yep.
So the kind of the analogy I've been using to explain to people is our economy is definitely in a changing situation, right? I mean, if you're listening to this currently in 2025, the underlying conversation on the economy is almost everything feels driven by AI, right? And some derivative of that. Well, our economy is kind of changing a little bit, right? We're seeing, what is AI going to do? How is it going to change jobs? How is it going to change stuff? We just came through this time of recording. We just came through Thanksgiving. And so you're starting to see retail numbers of like Black Friday and
Cyber Monday.
Cyber Monday.
Yeah,
I
there you
almost
go.
said online Monday, right?
Yep.
Giving Tuesday.
Small Business
Small Business
Saturday.
Saturday.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
all the things. And so you're starting to see those numbers. And so it's interesting to start to see what the economy is doing and how it's changing a little bit, right? A lot of those activities that I heard this morning in some of the notes were that some of those things were driven by artificial intelligence driving traffic to some of these different sites and activities and stuff. So it's out there, right? Well, as our economy is changing, what I've had conversation with a lot of different clients is I live on this lake. And you have, all different types of boats out there. It's an all sports lake. And a lot of times you'll have little speed boats on there, and you'll see these little boats going, and they might be pulling a tuber or a couple of tubers or a wakeboarder or whatever. When that passenger falls in the water, when whoever they're pulling falls in the water, they're supposed to wave and make sure nobody gets injured and make people know there's somebody in the water. But the boat turns on a dime and can get right back to them. It can turn and be back there immediately. That's kind of like some smaller economies, some smaller places. They can change their economy quickly. With that comparison, we would be a cruise ship in that same situation, right? We are not turning quickly. We don't change on a dime. There is a lot of underlying moving parts of things that are still happening in our economy that might have been happening for years, right? You could say today that an administration or a municipality could come and say, we want to build houses. Great, but you're not building those houses for a few years, right?
Yeah.
So it takes time for our economy to change a little bit. Doesn't mean there's not a lot of moving parts, but we are seeing change. And so that's a lot of what we're talking about with families right now is we are preparing for changes. We're monitoring those changes, but that's definitely something we're seeing.
No, but you're exactly right when you say that, where, a skier goes into, or a tuber goes into the water, you can turn around, or someone, literally falls off a cruise ship. Just think about how long
right.
it would take them to, turn around. They probably could drop a boat, one of the,
a tender,
quicker than they can probably turn on that cruise ship. So there's little, life rafts and so forth that probably that we use even as an economy to help some things, but the issue is really, it is a slow to the economy for it to be changed, totally, and a good example of that is just the tariffs in general, right?
Sure.
Part of the reasoning behind that is that he wants everything American, our president wants everything American made right now, okay, which it's not a bad thing, but the problem with that is now we don't have the infrastructures,
right.
We don't have the plants to do a lot of that
right.
stuff too,
right.
and so it's a great idea that we want to build other, whether it's cars or using a lot of the minerals and resources that are out there. But the issue then is we still got to, if you build a big plant for, even when we're in auto companies right here, if you want to build cars, how many years does it take to build, these acres and acres and acres of plants that can be able to build out of these things.
In our job in these conversations, and not to offend anybody, but our job is not to be political. Our job is to be honest.
Yeah.
The idea of bringing the manufacturing back here is a wonderful idea, but those companies aren't going to bring back all those jobs like it was 30 years ago. They're going to bring back manufacturing perfectly fine if they do, but that's where robots and AI and innovation is going to happen, which is still a great thing. But there's a difference in what we're thinking is going to happen. The golden age of manufacturing in the United States doesn't seem like that. That's just not where we're at anymore. And it also doesn't feel like that's where our economy wants to go. Like our economy is a consumer economy. We're a service-based economy, and that's where people are building and striving. It's hard because and I saw this statistic. And again, when you look at statistics, so do you know what the number one job is? There are many, 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 many jobs in the United States. I shouldn't say the number one, but one of the top jobs in the United States is truck driver. There are more trucks on the road. There are more drivers driving trucks than, almost any other job. In that spot, though, imagine what would happen if we innovate and all of a sudden we said to every truck driver, your job is gone. Well, that that is a massive issue for our economy. That would cause major, major problems for many different reasons, right? Not just people being out of work, not just those people struggling, not being able to pay bills, not just, but then, but you hear the other side is the economy saying, well, no, it'd be great if these trucks could just run year round. It would keep our cost, or not year round, but yeah, but without having to have somebody taking time off or resting or the human element, it would lower things. And you're looking at this going, okay, this is where our economy is. We're in this changing situation where, yes, that makes sense. If you could lower accidents, you could lower your overall costs, you could lower things from the consumer end. If that made goods and services cheaper, boy, that'd be great. But now if one of the biggest jobs in America, if those people are all out of work, that's now harming our economy. That's not helping any, right? So see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? We're
Yeah.
in this
People buy more
changing.
things, but yet they don't have the jobs to buy more things. You know what I mean? So,
Correct.
so
Well,
then to,
you're in this changing situation that we're just in the middle of.
well, yeah, well, frankly, it's already evolving, right? They already
Absolutely.
have, driverless trucks that are going to be out west
Yeah.
they have certain routes that are doing driverless trucks. And even just in the last couple of weeks, for the first time that at least I got on my Amazon
Yeah, the
was
drone.
delivered by a drone, and it was just kind of, I wish I was home. I'm just curious to see it because I've not seen it
Yeah.
drop it, but it did. It came up on my Amazon. We're going to deliver it at this time, and it's going to be a drone. And it's kind of funny because we have a little Facebook chat for our neighborhood, and there's been drones flying around, and so they're like, "What's going on?" And that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It's that now we're having these packages being delivered by drones. So
Well, and there's so many different parts to that economically, as far as, I mean, there's ethical questions too, on all these changes bring up ethical questions. Is it right to put all these people out of work? Is it right to do these? Okay, we can't get into the ethical stuff. That's not really where our podcast is. It's not really where we're
yeah,
talking about that. But if you look at it from an economic conversation, you're looking at it going, okay, where is the potential opportunities? Where are we looking at things for families? And then where are the potential pitfalls, right? And,
yeah,
and that's where you have the conversation. When you're looking at the drones, you're looking at that type of stuff. This was, gosh, I did the research on this. This is a number of years ago. I want to say it was almost 10 years ago I saw this, but don't bite me on the exact time. But back then, Amazon did $500 million of business a day. And they've only grown. I can't imagine what the amount of business they're going to be doing 10, 15 years from now based on where they're at, right?
yeah.
And maybe it's not sustainable. Maybe people want to be more local, but boy, it sure is easy to hit a button and have that delivered tomorrow, or when the drones could be delivering it out, a couple hours
Yeah,
later, right?
isn't
I
that
mean,
crazy that sometimes it's day or it'll be there in a couple hours,
yeah,
because they have
yeah,
all of the resource centers, or the big manufacturer, well, the
yeah,
warehouse centers, I should
yeah,
say,
yeah,
that they
yeah.
have so many local things too. And the issue though is a lot of that comes down to, and we're talking about Amazon in general, but just the competition in general,
Sure.
because a lot of people, all the Walmarts of the worlds and the other, a lot of the big box stores are trying to compete for a lot of this business too,
Yeah.
and the delivery services, and even a lot of the apps themselves.
And you look at what that does to our economy and the changeover stuff. Across the board, you look at it. Use the example of anything, anything right now, and once somebody knows that you're willing to pay for that, even if their price end goes down, they're not really lowering their price, right?
Yeah.
It's not like they're going to go, well, Mike, you're willing to pay $10 for this, and our underlying cost was $8, so we have a profit margin of 20%, or we're making $2 on it. Okay, but now, hey, our underlying cost went down to 650. Mike's still willing to pay 10. He doesn't know any difference. So now we're making more profit.
Yeah.
And that's where that's kind of what we're seeing going forward. That's part of the other part of the change in the economy is people are now kind of selling in going, well, quote unquote, inflation isn't as bad. That's what people are trying to report. Inflation has gone down,
Uh-huh.
but prices are still expensive as heck.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right. I mean, that's and that's where the one of the things I saw recently was that part of the conversation. And I'm curious when people see this, we see families that are at a near retirement is a lot of our bread and butter, right? A
Yeah.
lot of the primary people we're seeing. When we're seeing those families and they walk into retirement, the first phase of retirement is they can afford to retire, generally speaking. That's why they retire. What's interesting is that demographic is still spending money. I'll hear people tell me all the time, oh, inflation is terrible. Well, what does it stop you from spending? Well, what do you mean? I just know it's terrible. Okay. But now we're starting to see the other side of the economy where there are people having to start to make changes. And
Yeah.
what does that do economically? That again, the underlying conversation about this is we're in a changing part of the economy, right?
Well, yeah, and what is that change when it comes down to that, and a lot of it is again with when we're talking about some of the things we've already talked about, what we're seeing is the convenience.
Sure.
Is the issue is everything's electronic. You're talking about AI.
Sure.
We're talking about the people are willing to pay oftentimes for that convenience. As we're sitting here in our studio, there's a bunch of Amazon boxes, because we're hosting an event for our clients, a Christmas event actually for a few of our clients, and there's just a bunch of stuff here, and we are on the 5th floor of a building, and the parking is not the best here either, and so it's just way more easy to have someone deliver it, than for us to then go to a store and then you have to wagon it up or whatever you got to do to get here, so it's just that convenience, and frankly half the time it's probably cheaper anyways because of the masses
It is
buying it.
It is. You want to have that conversation of buy local and do these different things, but again, economically, our job, if we're talking about from this conversation, our job is to help the families we work with, help the clients we work with do the best. Well, that is what's the bottom line, what's the results, how is it moving forward, and that's again, we talk about having a plan, having all the different types of things. If we're just assuming there's a great plan, and now you're looking at economic conditions, you're looking at these changes, going, okay, are there opportunities for them? Is AI an opportunity? Is artificial intelligence an opportunity as a place to invest or something to do? Well, yes, but more than likely you have it everywhere in your portfolio already, right? You know what I'm saying? Every company is investing, not every company, but I mean, it feels like almost every company is investing in AI, right? So while, while you may not have this particular, company, because a lot of them are still private, you may have it in the other fashion, right? Like we just using Amazon as an example, but they're also heavily invaded in AI, right?
Yeah.
So they're heavily invested, I guess I should say, in AI. So I mean, so you're seeing it throughout your portfolio. Okay, well then what opportunities are there with this type of stuff economically? What are we looking at? So that's I think where a lot of our conversation today is saying, okay, having an honest, open conversation, there is a lot of growth, but there also feels like there's potential for pitfalls, right?
Yeah.
I heard a statistic the other day that that the U.S. economy, the vast percentage of the U.S. economy, and I don't know if this makes sense the way I'm explaining this, the vast percentage of the U.S. economy is being driven by the upper 10% of people. Does that make so?
Yeah.
People are still traveling. They're still spending money. They're still going out to dinner. They're doing all those things, but it's a small percentage of our economy that's doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it just when throughout the years, when you ever hear statistics, and again, unfortunately, in our country, there's still just an enormous amount of poverty.
Sure.
A lot of people live in paycheck to paycheck, and there's statistics back in the day too about what percentage after age 65 are living on Social Security alone, and so forth. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that the top income earners are driving the economy. That's I think it's but the issue that's happening now is that higher net worth individual is becoming more prevalent. They talk about the middle class millionaires now, and there's more millionaires now than there's ever been, which the baby boomers that are we're on the tail end of that as well, and it's the biggest that they're talking about the biggest a group of individuals that are going to inherit money too, right? Because now we have that next generation that will inherit some of this money too. So some of that stuff will live on in some form or fashion. Whether it's the top income earners or whether it's the top net worth individuals that drive the economy. But a lot of the economy is driven just by the average individuals. Because there's no pensions any longer, right? And so what most people have to invest in their 401ks, and so the 401k is some of the companies and the IRAs and the 401ks, 403bs, 457s, etc. those are some of the biggest investments in the entire world,
Right.
right? Or well, I'll
Right.
say the country. Well, for the Michigan, as far as not Michigan, but United States of America for sure. Um, and so that's driving a lot of the economy as well.
Sure.
And so that's why I think we've seen a little bit of the rise in the economy that we've seen as much, and we also have not seen as much pullback. We do still see it because obviously the wealthy that whenever there's profits, they're going to pull back from some of that stuff. But a lot of that money that's in these retirement plans have to stay there. If you're a 55-year-old person,
Yeah.
you
Where are you
just
gonna
can't
yeah.
pull it out. And so a lot of that stuff has driven the economy a little bit more than we've seen previously.
And what's interesting though is and I think for you the listener, we talk about this all the time. The stock market is not necessarily just the economy, or the economy is not necessarily the stock market, right? The conversation of Wall Street and Main Street are two different things,
Yeah.
right? So Wall Street, the stock market, you're right, driving that is pushing forward, and it gives this feeling of, hey, things are good. I'm making money if I have it there, and that again leans towards people doing well or doing even more well, right?
Yeah.
The people that aren't involved in that maybe can't afford to put as much in their retirement account, or like you said, living paycheck to paycheck, or looking at it going, yeah, the market's up 60% in the last 3 years, and I've got nothing out of that, or very little, right?
Yeah.
And so that's an interesting part of our economy that is going along, is that is definitely something we're seeing. Politicians are kind of putting words to it, but I think we're seeing people now start to say, hang on, we can't build a country, we can't build an economy that has this disparity. We have to somehow organize it. And the hard part there is what does that mean going forward? What does it look like? What does it do? Well, that's where, when we talk to people, we're looking for opportunities. We're looking for investment ideas. We're looking for places that you can say, hey, I can make money growing this way and this way. And what, when you're looking at it economically, if you're separating Wall Street and Main Street, you do have an entirely different conversation, right? People are feeling a bit more of a pinch, but then they're so where I think we talk about this, where I think we get into this conversation on the economy, trying to not say, oh, this is one where, again, we look for, how do we feel on stuff? Where are we at? What I mean by that is, you and I in the industry looking at this every day are going to feel one way about it. Families are going to feel a little bit different. And it's generally not going to be the exact same lineup. That's why they come to us for I generally, and I'm not picking on her, but I generally, if my mom gives me some sort of stock advice, I know it's time to sell and get out.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that mean, but do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's real. And I think that's with most everybody. Most everybody is, oh yeah, AI, should I invest in AI? Yeah, but and we'll see where gains are, but now it feels like maybe we're due for a little bit of a change in AI. It feels like a lot of the gains were there already, and maybe we're due for a little bit. So it's an interesting time period of paying attention to that economically.
Well, and frankly, economically, or if you look at, we were talking about the stock market or a lot of the indexes themselves, they're driven by the largest companies in the world.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So
Sure.
what's happening is there is a few of these huge, massive companies that, that basically have a large percentage of the indexes themselves, and technology is really what a lot of those companies are.
Yeah.
And so when you're dealing with that, there's a big driver with with a few small, I'm going to say a few, but
Concentrated.
it's very concentrated. Yeah. And there's, when we look at that, it may be a few dozen or, 50 of the largest companies in the world, but they have the big impact on almost the rest of the economy almost, when we look at that. And then there's other things we have to consider. You were talking about, whether it's, unemployment or, what is the jobs numbers and
Yep.
stuff like that. But interest rates play a big role too.
Yeah. And the way you said that, if you think of the overall economy, and I always, in my head, I grew up, I was taught this many, many years ago in a class. And the idea was, if you picture a 3-legged stool, right? If those 3 legs are equally spaced out, that could be a very sturdy stool, right? If those three, if where you sit for the stool is the U.S. economy, the 3 legs that I was always taught years ago was, one of the legs was the housing market. If the housing market is good, the economy is good. One of the legs was the stock market itself. And then one of the legs was the jobs market.
Yeah.
If you had a job and you had a house, if the stock market went down, you were still fine. You were putting money in and you were okay, and the economy could recover. If the jobs market was bad, but the stock market and housing was good, well, then it would recover. But same. So if two of those three go bad, though, now the economy wobbles and teeters, and we have an issue. Well, that's where we're looking at going. The stock market has been on just some unparalleled runs, right? All-time high after all-time high after all-time high. And there's a point where you go, okay, where is this going? Where are we at? And the housing market is extremely expensive. Boy, I mean, if you look at anything across the board, we're not building enough houses. We don't have enough houses. I mean, our kids are of age now where they're starting to look. My daughter got married, like we talked about that before. They were looking at houses. They're renting a house now because the purchase of buying a house is just so outrageous for a first-time house where they work. Their rent is more than twice what I paid for my first house for a mortgage.
Yeah.
Their rent is similar to the last bit of mortgage that I have.
Yeah.
And I own it's just the pricing has got, so the housing market and then the jobs market that's what we're talking about with so much change and stuff. So it's really interesting.
Well, and what's kind of interesting too about that. So, we're talking, going back to the interest rates part and the housing market, right? Because a lot of that has to be, can people get funds, right? And can they afford it because of the interest rate? So the interest rates going down is only going to drive a little bit more of the housing market. Think about just a few short years ago when, I refinanced at 2.62%, back then. And so when you're dealing with it now, we're starting to see that there's going to be, I think the housing market is still going to continue once they start lowering interest rates even more, because now money's more affordable,
Well, agree with you on that part for the available housing. The problem is what you're seeing, and this is a question we don't have this answer yet, but there's a lot of people buying houses to like Airbnb is in neighborhoods now. It's not just in like exotic locations. You have Airbnbs in neighborhoods now.
Yeah.
So now your competition is there. You're seeing if the value is lower, but what is the housing surplus? Are we building enough housing? You look at a lot of areas, and there's a number of different books on this, but it's really an interesting component when you look at where we don't have enough inventory of houses that people can afford, right? We don't have, and you look at some of the areas around the country. You and I remember, what was that, 7-8 years ago, we went down to Dallas and looked at what their growth was and how they were building. Maybe almost 10 years ago now, but it was just, we were stunned that they were building townhouses down there. And the builder that we were talking with was like, well, these are beautiful townhouses and we can't build them fast enough.
Yeah.
And we up here in our area thought, well, boy, why would you have a townhouse if you could have a full house? And down there, they're saying you can't afford a full house, but you can afford this, and it's beautiful. And it was just it.
Yeah.
But they had land and they were building like crazy, if you remember.
Yeah. It's huge housing market. Well, just a lot of places in Texas for that matter, when it came down to that.
Fast enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it is kind of crazy. And I think you're right. And even like the inventory, for the housing market, because a lot of times what we're finding too is if people are inheriting houses, it used to go back on the marketplace. Now that's going to Airbnbs, or sometimes going rental property now too, and then not being there to sell. So that's definitely changed things too.
When you're looking at it now, what do you do with this type of conversation? Because most people will have listened to this and went, well, okay, now I'm nervous. What do I you reach out, have conversations, because it's part of planning, right? Yeah. I would say you and I, our company in general, we're going to have our bucket plan where you're going to have your now bucket is your emergency money. So that's not really changing in any situation. You use it for an emergency, we replenish it, right? But that's the soon bucket. If you don't have a soon bucket, this is the conversation that should spur you to contact us and, hey, how do I create a soon bucket? That's not necessarily teetering or adjusting based on whims of the market and the volatility of the market.
Yeah.
Now, if I have long-term money, you or I might have money that we're not touching for 10, 15, 20 years. We're looking for opportunities. Hey, I'm okay if the market goes down because I can buy more stuff on sale and go up down the road. but I'm not necessarily that way for clients if they don't have a good plan, right? You
Yeah.
have to have the plan.
A lot of it is the plan itself, and really what it comes down to is we can tell you where the market is right now, right? But we none of us know what the market's going to do,
Right.
and again, there's been a lot of research out there, and people with double doctorates and economics
Sure, sure,
and all
sure.
that stuff, and you can read. I love the beginning of the year because I always try to read the forecast for the year, and you have all these individuals that are really really smart, but you have 7 different opinions of what's going to actually happen, so nobody really knows, and they've done statistical analysis on some of that stuff too. And like most of the time, even these guys are only right. We used to talk about the weather, but
Yeah,
it was
less
like
than a coin flip.
it's like one third of the time, right?
Well, and the interesting thing about that, just if you think about it, we were talking about this earlier. I don't know if you remember this conversation. They're generally going to lean towards the market going well, because even if they're wrong, everybody's like, oh, well, they were wrong. But if they tell you the market's going to go down and they're wrong, people make fun of them. They never forget that person.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So they're all going to say, oh, the market's going to go up 6, 8, 12. So those prognosticators, it's like you listen to that and you're like, okay, where's this coming from? And you're trying to glean that bit of information. But yeah, it's the same thing of going, okay, I have to have a plan. What is the plan to take advantage of it?
It is about the plan itself, and there's a lot of other things that are beyond our control when it comes to the economy too, and some things we've talked about in previous episodes too. But yeah, I think it's probably a good stop being point right now, because we can go talk about the economy for probably hours and hours and hours. And I think really the discussion, just to kind of, it was not too intricate today, but just to kind of get more of a basic knowledge and look at what are we looking for, and what might happen, and what are we just kind of thinking about. But I think you're right. It's all about having that plan.
Well, and I think to summarize it from our perspective, people ask me how I feel about the economy. At any time in life, I'm always antsy. Because I'm antsy. If the market's going up, are we getting enough gains? Are we doing enough stuff for the client? Do we have a good plan? Do we have it organized? If the market's going down, are we antsy? Are we protected? What opportunity? I'm always antsy about the market and looking at it, because our job is to try and, we're never going to be right 100% of the time, and we can't see the future, but our job is to try and at least mitigate the risks that we can.
Yeah.
And so that's
and capitalize on the gains.
And so this conversation, if you're listening to it, if you're in a good position on your risk component, if you don't feel that way, you're probably already talking to us or talking to somebody. If you feel you are, it's still probably worth double checking, because there's a lot of times you might not realize it. I had a family the other day that said, no, we don't have that much risk. And then I kind of showed them where their risk score was, and they went, oh, yeah, we didn't think that. So it's good to have the conversations on this.
Yeah. Or a lot of it is, I'm doing fine. And then you're like, well, compared to what? You know what I mean? So because they in their brains, they're doing fine, but are they getting the return versus the risk that they are taking? And when it comes down to that. So it's understanding that, which is great. And that's one of the things we can do, complimentary for individuals, and is analyze their risk and analyze where they're at, and kind of help them with some of that stuff. And then get a hold of us. Our phone number is 1-800-977-9292.
Or the website is fsa1.com.
Yeah, and we'd be happy to help you out, or do a conference call, a complimentary meeting, whatever you would like, virtual. We got it all here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about our last segment here, John. We call it our holistic happenings. Why don't you explain that a little bit?
So holistic meaning that we deal with the whole financial picture, whether it's just, and again, maybe we're not necessarily licensed for this, but we have people that are. So whether it's our company is addressing estate planning, tax planning, financial planning, insurances, whatever the case may be, right? The whole picture of what impacts someone at or near retirement age, and making sure they're all communicating together. And so we talk about that as that's how our company's been built. So this holistic happening section is from every week. You could just pull out of the blue that you or I do our jobs. You run into these situations where you weren't just talking about finances. You were talking about 3 other things that you needed to either give a referral for, or explain something, or get an answer for, or whatnot on the holistic side. So this is kind of one of those examples where we just say, hey, what did you see in the last week that somebody dealt with? That is something that our company does.
Yeah, I think one of the things we wanted to talk about, and I know we've been talking a little bit recently about early retirement, or if people want to retire at a certain age or date in the future. But one of the things that we've seen is one of the biggest mistakes that the retirees make oftentimes is going from this accumulation phase to the distribution phase without having that a written income plan. Okay, and so when we're doing a lot of projections and there's a lot of data, and of course we were talking earlier about the technology in general that can kind of statistic analysis that will say, okay, if I have X number of dollars and I want to live at a certain lifestyle, how long will money last?
Sure.
But a lot of that has to do with how the plan is set up too, and so that's where the mistake oftentimes happens, because you may have that, whatever that nest egg may be, and you may look at, different rules or different things that are out there, and have that plan. But one of the things that we want to make sure you do have, and one of the things, again, we can provide as an organization, is to have that written income plan, making sure that and oftentimes people then need that too, because it gives them that peace of mind of knowing, okay,
Sure.
if I want to live at X, let's say $5,000 a month for the rest of my life, or $8,000 a month, and I have X number of dollars, and I want to get Social Security at this age, may or may not have a pension, or may delay a Social Security, my wife will get hers first, and
Sure.
that kind of stuff, and we can use a couple different examples of that as well. So does it make sense? Do I take my Social Security at 62, or do I delay to 65 and supplement it with my retirement funds?
Right.
Or even using, should it be tax-free income or taxable income, or should I put money more into my Roth 401k now so that I can take tax-free income in the future?
Yep.
So a lot of it comes down is making sure that you have that plan, and that the plan has to change, because oftentimes people have done great, and so one of the mistakes they make is they do the same thing in retirement that they did when they were working, and then it's an epic fail. Okay, why isn't it epic fail? Is because when you're working, you're putting money into your accounts, and if the market goes down, you're adding money to it, right?
Sure.
So you're not only replenishing it, but you're buying low. The opposite happens when you retire, because now if the market were to go down, you're now selling at a loss, and then you're not adding money to it, so you're actually depleting it faster.
Yeah.
So we call it the flaw of averages versus the law of averages, and so the law of averages, when you're working, the numbers work the same. We're not worried about that. Absolutely. But the flaw of averages is using that same strategy in retirement. So I just wanted to kind of I see that still oftentimes we have people that we meet, and they're making making some of these same decisions because, again, it makes sense. This is what they did the last 30 or 40 years of their life, and that's what they're comfortable with. But come to find out that if they don't change the plan, oftentimes it can be a huge issue. And more importantly, we're finding a lot of there are a lot of firms out there that are still using those same strategies that can be to that detriment as well, because they're the long-term belief of the market analysis. So when it comes down to that.
And I think the great point there is just that conversation again. Planning is an action verb, right? It's you're doing financial planning, you're doing tax planning, estate planning, et cetera. It's not something you can just put on the shelf and be done. Oh, well, we made this decision years ago when I opened this account and I'm good, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, you were the magic. You put money into the retirement account. It probably worked. But whether you had the best funds or not, it wasn't the worst thing in the world because you were putting the money in. But now that you're not putting money in, planning matters. Great point, Mike.
All right. So I think, we keep talking about it. It's about the plan. It's about the plan and making sure that you do that. But I think also, whether it's using our firm or where you sit down with an advisory firm that does all similar things, is make sure that you do get that analysis, make sure that you understand that, and that, the technology's there that we can use, and the stuff that we do. Like we said, we retire people all the time, right? So we can help people do that. So, all right. So again, if you want to get a hold of us, our phone number is 1-800-977-9292.
Website is fsa1.com.
This is the Retireable Podcast. I'm Mike Wallace.
And I'm John Sauger.
You have a wonderful day.
Investment advisory products and services are made available through FSA Advisors, FSAA, a registered investment advisor. Annuity and insurance products are offered through Financial Services of America, Financial Services of America, FSA Health Insurance Agency, doing business as FSA Insurance Agency, FSA Tax and Accounting, and FSA Advisors are commonly owned and operated by FSA Marketing Incorporated, FSAM. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength, and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. The insurance products offered by Financial Services of America FSA are not subject to investment advisory requirements. This podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. FSA. A is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. Chartered Retirement Planning. Counselor and CRPC are trademarks or registered service marks of the College for Financial Planning in the United States and/or other countries. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by FSAA.